I never imagined I'd be the kind of person to snoop through my husband's things. I always believed in trust, in respecting privacy, in giving space. But something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow, creeping feeling that something wasn't right. I married Daniel 6 years ago. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and built a life together. He was the kind of person who made you feel safe. Steady, reliable, never overly emotional but always present. He wasn't the grand romantic type, but he was there when it mattered. At least that's what I thought. Lately, things had felt different. It started with small things, his distant looks, the way he seemed more absorbed in his thoughts than in our conversations. He didn't smile as much, didn't laugh at our usual inside jokes. When I asked if something was wrong, he always said no, that work had been stressful or that he was just tired. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then there were the nights he would stay up late in his office, claiming to be working on reports. There were times I would wake up in the middle of the night, reach over for him, and find the bed empty. And when I would get up to check, I'd see the faint glow of his desk lamp under the door, the sound of papers shuffling, the occasional scratch of a pen. He had always been organized, always kept journals and notebooks to keep track of his ideas, his thoughts, his plans. I never paid much attention to them before. They were his, and I never felt the need to pry. But that changed the night I found one lying open on his desk. It was late. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from another long day. I had gone to get a glass of water when I saw the notebook sitting on the desk, slightly tilted, just enough that I could see a few words written on the page. And they made my stomach drop. I told myself I wouldn't read more, that I shouldn't. But my hands had a mind of their own. I stepped forward, heart pounding, and turned the page. And what I read made my blood run cold. Daniel's handwriting was neat, precise, but the words were unsettling. I've never loved her. Not really. I thought I could, but it was never there. I thought if I stayed long enough I would grow into it, that I would feel something real. But I don't. I never have. Couldn't breathe. My eyes darted across the page, desperately trying to make sense of what I was reading. She thinks I'm happy. She thinks everything is fine. But I feel nothing when I look at her. I feel nothing when I hold her. I go through the motions, but it's all empty. I should have left years ago. My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages, each entry more painful than the last. She doesn't know how exhausting this is. Pretending, smiling, acting like I care. I felt sick. The man I had shared my life with, the man I thought loved me, had been living a lie. And now I had proof of it written in his own handwriting. I closed the journal slowly, my hands shaking. I stared at it, at the weight of it, at the betrayal hidden within its pages. I couldn't stay in that room. I couldn't stand there, surrounded by the lies of a man I thought I knew. I turned off the light, walked out, and sat in the dark of our bedroom, staring at the wall, wondering how I had been so blind. I sat in the dark for hours, my mind spiraling in every direction. The words in Daniel's journal weren't just words. They were proof that my marriage had been a lie. Every "I love you," every hug, every small moment I had cherished meant nothing to him. He was just acting, pretending, going through the motions. I thought back to the early years of our relationship. Had there been signs? Had I been so blind, so desperate to believe in the love I thought we had that I ignored the truth? I tried to remember a time when he had looked at me with real love in his eyes, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if it had ever happened. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and an ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. Daniel was already up, standing in the kitchen, making coffee like it was just another normal day. "Morning," he said, glancing at me. I mumbled something back and sat at the table, watching him move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't hiding the fact that he had never loved me. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw the journal in his face and demand an explanation. But something in me held back. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I started observing him. Every interaction, every word, every glance. Was it all fake? Was every smile forced? Every affectionate touch just another act? That night, I waited until he fell asleep and went back to his office. My heart pounded as I picked up the journal again. If he had written that, what else had he written? I flipped through the pages, looking for answers. I keep thinking about what my life would be like if I had made different choices. If I had walked away sooner. If I had never gotten married at all. I swallowed the lump in my throat and kept reading. She deserves the truth. But I don't know how to tell her. I don't know if I ever will. So he knew. He knew he should tell me. He knew he was lying to me. But instead of facing it, he just kept pretending. The more I read, the worse it got. There are days I feel trapped. Like I'm stuck in a role I never wanted. She's a good person. But she's not the person I wanted. She never was. Tears blurred my vision. But I kept reading. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just left. Packed a bag. Walked out. Disappeared. Would she cry? Would she fight for me? Or would she finally see that I was never really there to begin with? I felt like I was drowning. I closed the journal and sat there, gripping the edges of the desk. My entire body was shaking. I had spent 6 years of my life with a man who wished he was anywhere but here. A man who dreamed of leaving me behind. A man who had been lying to my face every single day. And the worst part? He didn't even hate me. He didn't cheat, he didn't treat me badly, he didn't resent me. He just felt nothing. I had always believed the worst thing a person could feel in a relationship was hate. But now I realized indifference was even worse. I wasn't his love. I was his burden. The weight of the journal followed me everywhere. I went through the next few days in a daze, pretending like everything was normal. But it wasn't. Nothing was normal. My marriage was a carefully crafted lie, and I was the last to know. Daniel continued his routine: work, dinner, TV, sleep. He kissed my cheek before heading out in the morning, asked about my day at night, and smiled at the right moments. But now, every time he touched me, I wondered how many times he had faked it. Every "love you" felt like an echo of a lie. I started seeing everything differently. The way he avoided deep conversations. The way his eyes drifted past me, never really settling. The way he always seemed present, yet absent at the same time. I was living with a stranger. The journal sat hidden in my closet, locked in a box under a pile of clothes. I couldn't bring myself to read more, but I couldn't ignore it either. His words kept repeating in my head. Asterisk, she's not the person I wanted. She never was. Asterisk. I started questioning everything. Our wedding day, was he faking it then? The anniversary trips, the lazy Sundays on the couch, the late-night talks. Was all of it just an obligation to him? Had he ever, even for a second, looked at me and felt something real? One night, I found myself staring at him as he slept, searching his face for any sign of the man I thought I knew. But all I saw was someone who wanted to be anywhere but here. I needed to do something. The next morning, I made an excuse to leave the house early and went to see my sister, Lily. She greeted me with a smile but frowned the second she saw my face. What's wrong? I hesitated. I wanted to tell her, but the words felt impossible. How do you tell someone that the person you love never loved you back? Instead, I just said, I think something's wrong with my marriage. She sighed. What happened? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I couldn't tell her about the journal. Not yet. I feel like he's been distant, I said instead. It wasn't a lie. Lily tilted her head. Daniel? He's always been quiet. Maybe he's just stressed. I forced a smile. Yeah, maybe. But I knew it wasn't stress. It wasn't a rough patch. It was something bigger. Something that had been there all along. I just hadn't seen it. I left her house feeling more lost than ever. That night, I watched Daniel again. Every move he made, every word he spoke, I analyzed it, trying to figure out if I had ever really known him. Then something happened. I was cleaning up after dinner when I noticed his phone on the counter. He had left it unlocked, something he never did. My heart pounded as I reached for it. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe I just needed more proof, something beyond the journal to confirm what I already knew. I opened his messages. There weren't any suspicious texts, no hidden affairs, nothing that screamed betrayal in the way I expected. But then, I saw a name I didn't recognize, Henry K. I clicked the conversation. There weren't many messages, but what I saw made my blood run cold. Henry K. Have you told her yet? Daniel. No, not yet. Henry K. You're running out of time. Daniel, I know. I don't know how to do this. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Told me what? What was he hiding? And why did I have the terrible feeling that the journal wasn't the worst of it? The messages haunted me. My mind spiraled, trying to piece together what Daniel could possibly be hiding. You're running out of time. Those words echoed in my head, making my stomach twist with unease. I knew I couldn't ask him outright. If I did, he'd know I went through his phone. And if he had been lying to me for this long, what were the chances he would suddenly tell me the truth? I needed more information. I typed Henry K. into Daniel's contacts, but there was no last name, no details, just a number. I copied it down and debated calling, but my hands were shaking too much. What would I even say? That night, I barely slept. I lay awake beside Daniel, his even breathing filling the room, while my mind raced with possibilities. Was Henry a lawyer? A doctor? Was Daniel sick? Was he planning to leave? Had he done something he couldn't undo? The next day, I decided to do something reckless. I waited until Daniel left for work. Then I took the journal out from its hiding spot. My hands trembled as I turned the pages, looking for anything that could connect him to Henry. And then I found it. A page dated nearly 2 years ago. Asterisk, I still haven't told her the truth. I keep telling myself it's for her own good, that knowing wouldn't change anything. But I'm starting to wonder if I'm just a coward. I don't know how much longer I can pretend. Every time she looks at me with trust in her eyes, it eats away at me. She deserves to know. But once she does, everything changes. Asterisk. I read the words over and over, my breath coming faster. What truth? What had he done? I flipped through more pages, desperate for answers, but they were vague. Hints of guilt. Mentions of regret. A few times, he even wrote that he wished he had never met me. My hands clenched the pages so tightly I thought they might rip. I needed to find out who Henry was. I sat on the couch with my phone, staring at the number. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. A man's voice, low and cautious. Hello. I hesitated, my pulse hammering. Hi. I'm looking for Henry. A pause. Then, who is this? I swallowed hard. I'm Daniel's wife. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then, a slow inhale. He didn't tell you, did he? My mouth went dry. Tell me what? Another pause. Then his voice dropped lower. I think we should meet. My stomach clenched. Meet? I can't say this over the phone, Henry said. It's something you need to hear in person. My head spun. I wanted to scream at him to just tell me, but something in his voice, something serious, almost regretful, made me nod, even though he couldn't see me. Okay, I whispered. When? Tonight. He gave me an address, and I wrote it down with shaking hands. I hung up, staring at the paper in front of me. Whatever Daniel was hiding, I was about to find out. And I had the terrible feeling that my life would never be the same after tonight. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. My hands were unsteady, my breathing shallow. Every time I thought about what Henry might say, my stomach twisted tighter. I barely spoke to Daniel when he got home. He noticed. He asked if I was okay. I lied. That night, when he went to bed, I pretended to be exhausted and told him I'd join him later. I waited until his breathing evened out, then slipped out of the house, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Henry's address led me to a small diner on the edge of town. It was mostly empty, just a couple of truckers nursing their coffee in the corner. A man sat in a booth near the back, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, eyes scanning the room. When he saw me, his expression shifted, recognition, followed by something softer. Pity. I knew then that I wasn't going to like what he had to say. I slid into the seat across from him. Up close, Henry looked older than I expected. Maybe in his late 50s, with deep lines on his face and tired eyes. "You're Daniel's wife," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Who are you?" He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "I wish you weren't here," he muttered. Then he looked at me, his gaze steady. "I knew this would happen eventually. He couldn't keep it from you forever." My throat was dry. "Keep what from me?" Henry hesitated, staring at his coffee as if the answer was at the bottom of the cup. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "I knew Daniel's parents." I frowned. "I thought they passed away when he was a teenager." Henry let out a humorless laugh. "Is that what he told you?" My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" He looked up at me, his expression grim. "They didn't die in an accident. That's just what Daniel tells people. The truth is, he killed them." The world tilted. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't. I shook my head. "No. No, that's not." Henry's face didn't change. "He was 16, he said. "I was working as a detective at the time. It was one of the worst cases I'd ever seen. I felt like I was going to be sick." "He never showed remorse," Henry continued. "Even during questioning, he just sat there, calm. He knew exactly what he had done." I was shaking my head, hands gripping the edge of the table. "No, no, that's not possible. He was never arrested. He was never charged," Henry said. "His lawyers argued temporary insanity, and the judge agreed. He was sent to a psychiatric facility instead of prison. He was released after 2 years, and his records were sealed. Legally, it's like it never happened." Couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. "You're lying," I whispered. Henry sighed. "I wish I was." I pushed away from the table, suddenly needing to get out of there, needing to be anywhere but here. But Henry wasn't done. "There's more," he said. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to run, to pretend I had never come here, never made that call. But I stayed. Because deep down, I knew there was no turning back. I don't remember driving home. My hands were on the wheel, my foot pressed the gas, but my mind was somewhere else. Stuck in that diner, replaying Henry's words on an endless loop. Daniel killed his parents. It didn't make sense. I had been with him for years, seen him at his best and worst, and never, not once, did he ever seem like the kind of person who could do something like that. But then I thought about the journal, the strange entries, the cold detachment in his writing, the things I hadn't understood before now. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my body was trembling. The house was dark, and for a brief moment, I considered turning around, driving somewhere, anywhere else. But then the porch light flicked on, and the front door opened. Daniel stepped outside. I felt my heart seize. He stood in the doorway, watching me, his expression unreadable. I forced myself to move, to get out of the car and walk toward him. My legs felt weak, like they might give out at any second. "You were out late," he said. His voice was calm, but something about it made my skin prickle. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, I went for a drive." He tilted his head slightly, like he didn't believe me. "A drive?" I nodded. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then he stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. I hesitated, but I went inside. I felt his eyes on me as I locked the door behind me. "Are you okay?" he asked. I turned to look at him. I saw the same face I had loved for years, the same gentle expression, the same warmth in his eyes. And yet, I felt like I was standing in front of a stranger. I forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. He studied me for a second longer, then nodded. All right, let's go to bed. I climbed into bed next to him, staring at the ceiling while he turned off the light. I listened to his breathing slow, waited for the moment I knew he was asleep. And then, very carefully, I slid out of bed. I moved as quietly as I could, creeping toward the closet where I had hidden the journal. My hands shook as I pulled it out, flipping back to the pages I had skimmed over before. I needed to know the truth. I needed to see it with my own eyes. And as I read deeper into the entries, my stomach twisted into knots. Because Henry was right. Daniel didn't just kill his parents. He enjoyed it. I could barely breathe as I turned the pages. My hands were shaking, my vision blurred from the sheer weight of what I was reading. Daniel had written it all down. Every detail, every thought. At first, I kept hoping I was misreading things, that there was some way, any way, to explain what I was seeing. But the further I read, the more the truth sank into me like ice. He wrote about how they had made his life miserable, how they controlled every aspect of his childhood, how he felt suffocated by their expectations. But it wasn't just anger or resentment. The words had a cold, calculated precision. He planned it. He waited for the perfect moment. He poisoned them slowly over months. He documented their decline, writing about how his mother had grown weaker, how his father had become confused, how the doctors thought it was some rare, degenerative illness. He had been careful not to draw suspicion, careful to act the grieving son when they passed. And then he wrote about the funeral, how he stood there, shaking hands, accepting condolences, listening to people talk about what a tragedy it was, how he had to bite back laughter because no one knew what he had done. I slammed the journal shut, my breath coming in short gasps. I felt sick. I wanted to run, to get out of this house, to be anywhere but here. But then I heard movement, a shift in the blankets. I turned my head slowly, heart hammering in my chest. Daniel was sitting up in bed. In the darkness, I could just barely make out his silhouette, his head tilted slightly, watching me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he spoke. "What are you doing?" His voice was quiet, calm, too calm. I forced myself to breathe, to act normal. I gripped the journal behind my back, keeping it out of his sight. "Couldn't sleep," I whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you." He didn't respond right away, just kept looking at me, like he was studying me, like he was trying to figure something out. Then slowly he nodded. "Come back to bed," he said. I hesitated. My body was screaming at me to run, to get out of there. But I knew I couldn't let him see my fear, so I forced myself to move. I slid the journal under the dresser when he wasn't looking, then climbed into bed beside him, my back to him, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I felt him shift, felt his arm drape around my waist. And then he whispered, so softly I almost missed it, "I know you've been reading it." I woke up to a pounding headache and a dull ringing in my ears. My body felt heavy, sluggish, like I was floating between sleep and wakefulness. My eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was familiar, but something felt off. Then I remembered. The journal. Daniel waking up. His hands gripping me. The fear in my chest. I sat up too quickly, my head spinning. I was still in our bedroom, but the dresser drawer where I had hidden the journal was wide open, and the journal itself was gone. Panic shot through me. Daniel was sitting in the chair across from the bed, flipping through the pages of the journal like he was reading a novel. His expression was unreadable. "You really should have left it alone," he said without looking up. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "You drugged me." He finally met my gaze, tilting his head slightly. "Just enough to keep you from doing anything reckless." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I had underestimated him. "I had to know, Daniel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I had to know the truth. He closed the journal and set it down beside him. And now that you do, what happens next? I had no answer. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly trapped. I had been so focused on uncovering his secrets that I never thought about what I would do once I knew them. Daniel sighed and stood up, walking toward me slowly. You always looked at me like I was the perfect husband. But we both know that's not real, don't we? He crouched down beside the bed, his face inches from mine. So what are you going to do now? I forced myself to hold his gaze. I had two options. I could pretend, act like I could forgive him, like I could live with this twisted version of the truth. Maybe then I'd get the chance to escape later. But could I really live like that? Could I survive being trapped with someone I now feared? Or I could end this. I glanced toward the nightstand, where I knew Daniel kept a small letter opener. Not exactly a weapon, but sharp enough. He followed my gaze and smirked. I was hoping you'd fight back. I lunged. My fingers closed around the handle, and I swung before I could think, aiming for his arm. He dodged, but not fast enough. The blade cut across his forearm, and he cursed, stumbling back. Adrenaline took over. I ran. Through the bedroom door, down the hallway, toward the front door. My hands fumbled with the lock, my vision blurring with panic. Daniel's footsteps were behind me, fast and angry. I ripped the door open just as his hand grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back. I kicked out wildly, striking his shin, and for a second his grip loosened. That was all I needed. I bolted outside, barefoot, onto the street. A neighbor's porch light flicked on. I screamed loud, desperate. Daniel froze. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't before. Fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of exposure. More lights turned on. A car slowed as it passed. This was my chance. I ran straight to the neighbor's house, pounding on the door. Daniel didn't follow. I turned back in time to see him step inside and close the door, disappearing into the darkness. The police arrived minutes later. When they searched the house, Daniel was gone. The journal was gone, too. I told them everything. The drugs, the journal, the secrets. But without proof, it was just my word against his. Weeks passed. I left the house, moved in with my sister, changed my number. And then, one morning, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single page from Daniel's journal. Just one sentence written in his familiar handwriting. This isn't over. But it was. Because I wouldn't spend my life running from him. I went to the police again, hired a lawyer, filed for a restraining order. Daniel had underestimated me, too. And this time I wasn't afraid.